and get you going live as we're ready to go. Dr. Cavill's inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. So, Charles, as we get to first week, really, with several conference games, and that was conference games in the MEAC, conference games for Tennessee State and OVC, and then you also had conference games in the SWAC. What I thought was really intriguing this week, and it hit me Saturday as I started talking about and looking into the matchups. Last Tuesday, it really didn't hit me like that. But you actually had we talked about the fact that all the games were featuring conference matchups. So you had 5 games, the 10 teams playing. But I didn't realize that you had the entire West going on the road to the East.
Yeah.
I actually like that in some ways.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And so when I saw that quickly, I jumped in and decided, well, is this purposeful to some degree, and wanted to see later in the season, or are you going to have a time where everybody in the East
makes a trip
to the West and plays, different teams, obviously, in that component. So I really thought that was interesting. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that in regards to, before we get in those matchups, any big-time news, HBCU sporting news out there that you want to?
Well, sure. I was going to jump right off, and we'll head to the MEAC. We'll start on the East Coast, and I tell you what, North Carolina A&T, they swept the honors this week in the MEAC, because it was North Carolina A&T claiming the offensive player of the week and defensive player of the week. Offensive player of the week was Marquell Cartwright, 5'8", 200-pound running back from High Point, North Carolina. He rushed for 176 yards on 17 carries, including a 72-yard touchdown. He averaged 10.4 yards per carry for the Aggies this past week, and as they routed Morgan State. In addition, Matt McCain was Defensive Player of the Week, second week in a row, multiple interceptions. He had 2 interceptions that were returned for touchdowns for 178 yards total, which was 38 yards short of the NCAA FCS record. He is one of only 28 FCS players to return 2 interceptions for a touchdown in a game. That brings his total to the season with 6 picks.
One of how many?
One of only 28 FCS players.
Wow.
That's history.
That's pretty nice.
Also, Offensive Lineman of the Week was Brandon Parker. Brandon Parker, he helped lead the way for North Carolina A&T, 514-yard offensive performance against Morgan State. Get this, the Aggies rushed for 345 yards this past week.
345 yards?
345 yards.
And you don't have some teams get that in 3 games.
Exactly. They have to speak on it. We'll get to that later, but they got
somebody got something to say.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's tough over there. But as we switch over to the SWAC side of the ball,
is that bad? Were you saying over there now? You're not even playing over there? Wow.
I tell you what, it's tough times. We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
I'll let you get to it.
Yeah, as
I had to poke the bear a little bit.
Oh, yeah, of course you got to. Take a look at the SWAC offensive player of the week was DeLance Turner. DeLance, he recorded the second most rushing yards in school history with 272 yards this past weekend against Southern in their 48-31 victory over Southern. He scored 3 touchdowns, including 2 on the ground and 1 receiving. Also, Defensive Player of the Week in the SWAC was DeMonte Johnson, defensive back, Plaindale in Louisiana. Johnson, he finished with 4 solo tackles, 3 interceptions all in the first half, and he also returned a blocked extra point for a 2-point conversion. Full day for him.
Man, he talking about getting it done. Since Mike's not quite here yet, as we get him rolling and sliding on here, I'm going to jump to the mid-major division. Amir Hall.
Yes, sir.
Continued to assault the books, the stat line, teams' ego, and all. As his offense exploded in a 76-7 win over Shaw. Hall was 22 of 32 for 420 yards and 6 touchdown passes. His second straight 400-yard, 6-touchdown passing day. Did you hear that? Second straight 400-yard, 6-touchdown pass a day. Man, can this team be stopped?
I don't know they
particularly in the
stopped.
CIAA.
CIAA, exactly. Amir Hall, he hadn't thrown an interception yet on the season. 17 touchdowns, no
Say
picks.
that one again. That's nice.
17 touchdowns, no interceptions thus far on the season.
Man, Ralph said we need to look at some national players.
Yeah.
I think we got one right
got
here,
one.
Ralph. Bowie State quarterback 4-0. He led his team to defeat Shaw 76-7, Ralph.
How tall?
22 of 32 for 420 yards.
How tall is it?
He's 6'4", 6'5". He's pretty good size. He's legit size. I'll get the exact size for you. He had 420 yards on 6 touchdown passes. His second straight 40-yard, 6 touchdown passing day, Ralph. That's my national player of the week.
I'll tell you what, life gets a lot easier when you have a quarterback. You take a look across the board as far as the FCS guys, especially for your major division and your mid-major. Amir Hall, mid-major. Devontae Kincaid at Grambling. Lenoris Footman at Alcorn. And Kalen Newton at Howard. You got a quarterback, you onto some things in FCS.
Did you talk about Kalen Newton, what he did?
Yeah, I hadn't talked about Kalen, not as of yet.
12 of 25.
How much did he rush for?
He had one rush alone that was 40-some yards. I had him up here. Let's see. He was in the business. He was giving them business.
Yeah, I think I like 122 some odd yards rushing. So.
Oh man,
Kalen was getting it done.
But the big part of that game was the fact that they're back in the football business.
Yes.
Defeating Bethune-Cookman in a thrill. He scored literally with 30-plus seconds, less than 40 seconds left in that game. So he's a bad man. Boy, I tell you, life is different when you have a quarterback. As you said it appropriately, I won't argue with that one. It was fascinating in terms of how you getting in there. But pull it up. I think we got him here. He made life miserable for Bethune-Cookman. In regards to what he's going here, just fascinating. I got to get through these numbers.
Yeah,
on the whole everybody else.
No, I got him for 12 or 25, 157 yards, and 122 yards rushing. Full day.
That's bad man.
Full day. Bad man.
Put the cape on.
Yes, sir.
Put the cape on.
Like you said, Howard's back in the football business. First year under Mike London. Getting it done.
So what does that do to some of these third-year coaches like Mike Jenkins?
It puts a lot of pressure in terms
what
of
is going on out there as people talking about Jackson State.
Very much so as well. Puts a lot of
Jackson
pressure
over there.
with regards
and
to
then you have, it doesn't help that even a third-year coach at Prairie View, he's had 2 successful campaigns and he's pushing forward. In a lot of ways, this matchup can go a long way on Saturday.
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock to continue to separate those.
Sure.
That framework between those coaches. Obviously, want to see any coach go, but fans, they really don't care. They got one thing on the mind, and that's win. Particularly when you program such as Jackson State, Southern, FAMU. Southern took it to the chin.
Yeah, they did.
I think the worst thing in that game that could have happened is that they jumped out.
They jumped out, exactly.
So you get those fans
they
thinking we're pretty good, and now they say, what happened?
Right.
So it can get ugly in a lot of ways as you go forward there. We'll get into some the poll rankings as Mike gets sets up. We'll get into the poll rankings a little bit. We'll go in that the last 45 minutes or so of the show. Any other news, any matchups that stood out to you this week? I know we talked about some of them with Bowie State just beating up on Shaw. I think there was
Bowie State have to do
that comeback win. Yeah, did you see that?
Why did they have to do that to Shaw?
That was
and why did St. Augustine have to do that to Lincoln? I mean, you could have started calling people out the stands.
Somebody told me they did. Give them the score because people had heard the score. So we told them the score of Bowie State, but give them the score if you get a chance.
St. Augustine. 81-9.
81-9.
How do you even find 81 points?
That's what I said. By 7, they
this is the wrong score. That's basketball. We
exactly.
got
That's basketball. That was football on grass.
Wow, it's amazing. Any other big time games that you said?
Well, taking a look in the OVC, Tennessee Martin against Tennessee State. Tennessee State, I was looking to make a statement in that game going to UT Martin, and UT Martin with a big win over Tennessee State, 33-16.
Yeah.
But I hope this doesn't impact Tennessee State because Tennessee Martin is always tough. I think only loss
actually
Ole Miss
UT
team.
Martin is usually not that good.
So,
But this year they are a top 25
Yeah.
team. So you do have to take that into consideration. But at some point, you chose to be in that conference.
right.
That's a conference game. You
Yeah.
got to win conference games. That's what you talk about
But
at
this
the
is
beginning of the year.
HBCU rankings, right?
Yeah, but you
Oh,
lost
okay.
the game.
All right.
HBCUs lost earlier games when they were playing non-HBCU teams too.
All right. And I know how they do against other HBCU competition.
Yeah, against HBCU, they're not the top though.
Yeah, but they dominate.
So I don't know about that excuse.
Yeah.
If they were beating up on Grambling like that, that is
Agreed.
show
If they
that they
haven't played
win. If they were beating up on North Carolina A&T, so let me ask you this: who you taking with Tennessee State and North Carolina A&T to act?
After this weekend, North Carolina.
North Carolina
All right.
A&T.
I risk my case.
North Carolina A&T.
I risk my case.
they
They answered a lot of questions,
Woo, didn't they
not
ever?
because it was. Oh God!
Now, what did you think about that matchup with North Carolina Central, the Eagles, and South Carolina State? ESPNU primetime game.
Yeah.
Great hitting, physical contest, went back and forth, and you had a coach. I'm gonna rub this in, Matt. Didn't he interview at Jackson State?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, okay. Y'all told him no, not right now.
Not right now. Well, it's going to be a rough
He
week.
lost
Ooh, this
two
gonna be a rough-
quarterbacks in that game.
Yeah.
Played a freshman,
Yeah.
Freshman backup.
backup to the backup.
Yeah.
Mike,
Freshman.
you're right.
redshirt
Not just backup, but
He's a
the
freshman
backup to the
redshirt.
backup.
So yes, he's a backup to the backup.
he comes off the bench and brings them from behind.
Yeah.
Defense was solid, keeping it in the game. In South Carolina, boy, you talking about Buzzer Luck. That is a solid team. They played a very tough schedule. A couple of plays here and there, they could easily be
Exactly.
3-0
Exactly.
in regards to that. Obviously, they had the game against Charleston Southern Council, I believe it was. That would have been an interesting matchup. But unfortunately, for SWAC fans, Mississippi Valley State gets a piece of that. And I don't think they're ready for Charleston Southern in terms of those matchups. So those are some of the things that are going around there. I like this. I think that matchup this week between North Carolina Central and FAMU Thursday night game.
Yep.
MEAC knows how to put good games on.
Very much so.
TV.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into HBCU sports, you want to see this game.
Right.
Period. If you just want entertainment in terms of what the MEAC has been able to do, and you want entertaining football games, you want to see this as well. But then you have a Saturday night game, A&T and South Carolina State.
Yeah.
Could be interesting in there.
It could be.
That's interesting.
I
with the
wouldn't
question.
pick it if you had asked me to put my house on it. I mean, but come on now.
It has potential.
Play with me now. You know,
Right,
I thought
we
about
got to
that.
sell it. You not even gonna help me sell it, y'all?
It has potential. South Carolina State is a very, very physical ball club. That linebacker, Darius Leonard, runs around and he makes plays all over the place. It could be fun, but
Mike, what
But,
says
no.
you?
I have-
Another data point.
I have to agree with my esteemed colleague there. It could be interesting, and I say "could" with a capital C. I don't know if South Carolina State, they didn't have the defense to stand with Southern, and now you're going to put it against North Carolina A&T.
Lamar Raynard.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
think we're so fascinated right now with A&T in terms of their offense, particularly because they're playing a different brand of offense. Obviously, we see they can still run the ball, but they put it up
Yeah.
too. That you're right, Mike. That's a great point. That we lose the fact oftentimes about what they're able to do on the defensive side of the ball. That really makes this team solid. And why, in my opinion, when they go outside of the conference, as you talked about earlier, is the fact they're able to win games. And that's my point when you start looking at A&T versus Tennessee State. Yes, when it came to play those non-conference games, historically white colleges, A&T finds a way to get it done.
Yeah, that's
they
true.
win.
I
Even
can't argue.
Grambling, to their credit, now Northwestern State is not one that you're going to fear, but the fact is, when we look at those matchups, when it was time to get it done on the field, Grambling got it done.
Okay, but the point I'd make is, yes, A&T did step out the conference. They did play the Gardner-Webbers. They did play the Richmond. They did play those outside. But if you compare that to a Tennessee Martin or Jacksonville State, which teams really are better? I mean,
Richmond's a top 5 team FCS. Richmond, and you saw what they did to Howard. I agree with you there. They're a tough matchup, so you don't want none of that. But Sam Houston, top 5 team as well. You had Nicholls State at that time. They were top 25. So you're talking about teams playing solid.
That's what Prairie View played, of course. But I'm talking with the discussion was A&T. All right.
A&T went beat
Gardner
Charlotte.
Who was that
FBS.
They played, was it Mars?
Mars Hill, that's one Division II team.
Come on now.
I could argue.
Yes, they step outside. They play Mars. They play Gardner Webber, who really is not that good. Okay, yes, they stepped outside. But
Gardner Webber's be the top.
They're 3 and something
in the Big South.
Big South. Yeah.
Aren't they 3 and something in their conference? Weren't they 3 and something in their conference?
Last year, but I'm saying they talk about this year they were rated second and third in the conference now. So pick and choose your battle.
Yeah, I'm picking and choosing my battle. They were 3 in a million last year. So
Morgan State thinks A&T is pretty doggone. They pretty doggone good.
Well,
I'm just saying.
So what do you think about FAMU in this matchup as they get back to it? They get a chance to make this statement a little more. Let's go back into this FAMU North Carolina Central game. It's going to be interesting who gets the nod in that quarterback. I think the starter may have had a serious injury. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But the backup, I don't think he was that hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see who he goes with.
Actually, I thought they moved the ball a little bit better with the backup quarterback from what I could tell. But one thing that jumped out with me was North Carolina Central's defense. Gosh, they're fast. I mean, they were flying around all over the place, making plays. And the physicality in that game with North Carolina
that
Central.
that was the other thing I was going to bring up. They held South Carolina State. They held them to limited yards, so that tells me a little something about their defense.
Yeah, South Carolina scored on a couple of big plays in that matchup, but overall, you make a good point.
Total yardage, they held them.
Juwan Ford, 17 to 25, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns in that matchup, and so in terms of what we're looking at there, it was pretty good in terms of those matchups, but also it looks like it should be games going on there. What about this Alcorn Texas Southern game?
I tell you what, right now it's tough for Texas Southern. I was expecting a little bit more in terms of playing Alabama A&M, and they got behind early in that ball game, and it forced them to do, I don't think, what they're great at in terms of trying to throw the ball around a little bit. I think they're a much better running football team. Alcorn right now, Willard Norris, Footman, they're electric, and he was held in check.
When you're a spoiled, my neighbor across the street is a Braves fan, alumnus, and he is actually disappointed in the play and the coaching of his Alcorn State. He doesn't think they're very good in terms of,
I don't know what he's watching right now. The last term going for 272.
Yeah, he was upset. He said they don't play full games. They make too many penalties. Not very disciplined.
Yeah, he sounds like Jackson State fan nitpicking back in the day. They ain't nitpicking no more, but speaking of which.
Well, let me jump in here since we're going to do that. We're going to do the mid-majors as we look at this to see what your thoughts are in a lot of ways in terms of what's going on here. Dropping out of the poll this week, you actually have 2 teams in the mid-major division dropping out this week. Benedict Tigers, Morehouse Maroon Tigers. They had tough losses. They drop out of the poll. But Miles Golden Bears beating that Morehouse Maroon Tigers in a matchup goes to 2-0 in the season. They jump in the polls as they were not ranked first time this year. Number 9, Virginia Union Panthers. They jump back in the poll after a 1 week hiatus. Then you get in Tuskegee Golden Tigers. Anybody see this whooping coming? They got beat up 2-2. Still 1-0 in the conference race, but they drop 2 spots as they go outside of the conference and take a tough one to the chin. Then you have Albany State Golden Rams. As they started off hot, 2-0, they were on a major slide. Hey, they dropped from 5 to 7. They continue on the wrong side. And when you look at the poll, what's going on here? Winston-Salem State Rams, 2-2, 1-1. I think they're very stylish. I still see them coming out of the South and get a chance to redeem themselves in the CIAA championship game. They arguably played the 2 top teams, not only in the CIAA, which happened to be in the North Division. So that Bowie State and Virginia State matchup could be classic.
Yeah.
Or maybe not the way Bowie State
The way
went.
Bowie State is taking down to you. Exactly.
But Virginia State made a nice comeback win to get it done against Winston-Salem State. So Winston-Salem State, the Rams fall 2 spots to number 6. So let's get in the top 5 going on here. Clark Atlanta Panthers bounce back at 3-1. They move up 3 spots from number 8. They get a chance to make a statement. They play Grambling in the Chicago Classic. Grambling is still, we believe they can turn it on at any time.
Yeah.
Let's be perfectly honest with that.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you've seen on the field, particularly the last couple of games, offensively, they're not clicking like they did last year. To your point, and to your credit, Charles, you said this in a lot of ways in regards to losing those wide receivers, some linemen. You thought they were concerned. Defensively, I don't think they're as talented as they were last year, but they're playing really good defense.
Right.
That part is on pace to at least equal what they're doing last year and see what's going on there. So that should be interesting in a lot of ways in terms of what's going on there. And then let me get into Elizabeth City State, 3-1, moving up 3 spots at 4. Langston Lions, 1 first place vote, 3-0. They get their second conference win in Central State Football League. They're doing what they got to do. It's when they get to Arizona, NAI team Nazarene, that is really going to be the test of the tape to see if they can make the next step. Virginia State Trojans, 3 first place votes, 3-0, 1-0. Stay at number 2. We told you about their big comeback win over Winston-Salem State. And we have Bowie State, 4-0, 1-0. We show them dominating in terms of what's going on there. So let's see. We get to our caller quick here. Coach Asberry. Doing pretty well, pretty good. Well, good to have you on the line there, Coach. Just want to talk a little bit about we're starting to get into conference play, so you get a chance to see some matchups. Let's just dig right into it, Coach.
What is he doing these days?
A lot of people want to know what you're doing these days.
Tell him Ralph Cooper want to know what he's
Ralph Cooper say he want to know personally what you're doing. He don't know about what everybody else wants, but he said he want to know what you're doing, Coach.
How you doing? I'm the football coach at my alma mater, my high school here in Baton Rouge.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Yeah, congratulations.
Always good to be able to come home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the last minute thing, and I got a call. I was getting ready to do a jamboree game and got a call. And that's what I'd be interested in. It was like 3 days before the first game.
Wow.
And I ended up taking the job. So, you know, we're 1-3 right now. The team is playing so much better. So I expect to finish strong here.
Good for you.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Keep it up and keep us posted in regards to how the season continues to push forward. And really, man, that's what you're talking about, coming back to your alma mater, particularly in a tight situation, and to take that opportunity is huge because you could have walked away with other opportunities and said no, but it seems like you probably came back and said, hey, y'all need me, y'all gave me a lot, and so we came back in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to give you accolades for that.
I appreciate it. I do want to say this to a lot of the schools that are listening. We have a ton of talent, and this year we have 5 commitments to the SEC, and we have some guys that are some heavy intakes. But I need to see more HBCUs. I haven't seen any HBCUs coming. So we have a ton of talent.
Certainly. You heard it here on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, Dr. Cavil. Thank you for sharing that, and we certainly going to do our part to make sure you get that information out. And I like the fact that you are pushing your kids to the next level. 1, 2, finding a way to still support HBCUs. So, again, thanks for that. Give us some insight in regards to what's going on. And I'm not sure how much you've been able to follow HBCU sports, but I know your heart there. So I imagine you get to find a chance to look at a couple of things. What you see in the SWAC so far?
Well, you know,
what do you see? Okay, great.
I tell you, those Grambling State Tigers, they're strong, man. They still doing some things that, you know, people just don't have an answer for that quarterback. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete. He knows when to run. He knows when to throw the football. He makes great decisions, and I think that's what's generating the most for Grambling right now, that quarterback. But they're also playing great football. They were in a dog fight with Southern this past weekend, but they you know, they just made the plays and Southern just didn't make the plays down the stretch. And Alcorn just, you know, created turnovers and some great things on defense. So those guys are playing great football. I know Jackson State, you know, we're 0-4 right now, but, you know, we're just missing. I've seen some great things that Coach Hughes is doing. It's just a matter of time before he gets that win against somebody that, you know, going to be somebody that say, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to beat them and beat that team. I mean, because they're playing solid football and just not bouncing their way right now.
Gotcha. Good point. And Charles, you want to follow up with a question?
Yeah, Coach, I know you watch Jackson State up close every week, and to your point, you said they were a solid football team, but talk about some of the things, I guess, that are happening with regards to teams where they just can't quite get over the hump.
Well, I mean, I think Saturday game, time love to Jackson State. I mean, it's like Jackson State makes a big play, get a good stop on fourth down. Time love went for it on fourth down. I mean, on several occasions, the official was standing right there with the guy on the other side of the field who was prepared.
Wow.
And made a pass interference call. Now, I got a guy standing right there watching the play. And this guy comes way from the other side of the field and throw a flag. I think they need to come up with a rule. And that guy does not have the right to throw that flag. And I'm standing right there and I didn't make the call. And that's what really hurts a lot of these teams. Even against Grambling. Jackson State, Grambling stopped Jackson State one time and a official threw a flag.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know, my thing is, I'm not against the officials. I just want it to be called both ways, or let the guys play. You know, and have fun. Don't take the excitement away from the guys. But then, too, at the same time, teams that I've watched, not only Jackson, you know, teams just have to make plays. The coaches are coaches. You know, just teams just have to make certain plays. And as just coaches, we also have to make sure we put those guys in the right place to make the right plays as well.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Very fair. Mike, you want to follow up?
Yeah, Coach Ash, this is Mike Washington. Big Mike, as my colleagues refer to me. They may not say it on the air, but so my question is to you. You've seen this football league at different levels, and my question is a little bit different. What things are you infusing into your players from a recruiting standpoint to prepare them for that next level?
Well, you know, here's what I tell those guys. When you come to college, you have your 17, 18, around 21 years old. Our careers are in the hands of a bunch of teenagers. And so what I'm trying to do with my guys is prepare them not to come in lackadaisical, you know, just, okay, I'm off to college. And, you know, a lot of kids are not, I want to make sure I word this correctly, they have not been through some of the tough times. You know, we as parents, we've given a whole lot more than what we normally would have given back in the day. Now you got kids having kids want to come to school and brand new cars and coaches that hadn't coached them tough. The problem that you run into is these high school coaches are not coaching these kids hard enough and tough enough to mentally prepare them to get to college.
Yeah.
So when the college coach jumps them, now they want to go in the tank. Or they want to call home and say, well, coach something there, coach too hard on them. But you have to prepare yourself for college because this is our livelihood that you're messing with up there. And that's what I'm trying to get my guys to understand.
I really like the framework, and not just in football and other sports, but in college in general. If you're not careful, I see this as a professor as well, the mental makeup in terms of how we deal with millennials this way. Certainly in a lot of ways, I appreciate the fact that they had the ability to answer the question why, but even when you give them solid reasons, the mentality to kind of take it to the chin. I gave a speech today in Professor Granger's class and with a bunch of freshmen and really honed in on small things, details, told them a couple of stories, did some framing like that. And as you talked about those that came in late, framing that into our discussion. in terms of being broke. And they picked up on it. It was funny. They made a joke. Kids started coming in late. They talking broke. I'll tell you the story. But Coach, we certainly appreciate you calling in. We're gonna get you back in the next couple of weeks. Let you get into it because we want to get another update. In fact, since you getting around that high school framework and obviously a lot of this about getting kids to the next year's grades, maybe you get a chance to give us some midterm reports in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I appreciate you guys for having me on. And Mr. Cooper, my biggest fan over there, I appreciate him too, all the years I was there.
Certainly, we'll let him know he's still cheering for you, and he certainly is proud of the work you're doing. Again, we thank you, Coach. And we know where your heart is, so we're going to say go Tigers.
Yes, go Tigers.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Exactly.
Watch out, Coach. Watch out, Coach. Man.
I'm not saying that.
I like that. That's a good job. Man, hey, give me a call off when you get a chance.
Thanks, coaches.
Okay, I'll call you tonight. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, so Coach is always welcome into the show. Always a good interview in regards to giving us a different framework from coaches. And now he has the ability to take it back a level and give us some more of that high school. I love the way he talked about the recruiting.
Yeah.
And he found a way not only to challenge his players, but also challenge these coaches out there. Come on and get some of these players. Right. I'm not going to stop you.
Right.
He celebrated what he did at HBCU. You come down, at least talk to him and see what you can get going on. And I'll tell him what it did for me.
I think it brings a unique perspective. He's been at the HBCU, and now he's here. He's dealing with millennials, as was pointed out. So I was interested to see what he's doing to really prepare these kids for the next level. So
Great point there, Mike. So now we talked about the top 10. I'll quickly go over there and let y'all chop it up, see what you want to do. Again, number 10 was Miles Golden Bears. Number 9, Virginia Union Panthers. Number 8, Tuskegee Golden Tigers. At number 7, Albany State Golden Rams. Number 6, Winston-Salem State Rams. At number 5, Clark Atlanta Panthers. At number 4, Elizabeth City State Vikings. At number 3, Langston Lions. At number 2, Virginia State Trojans. At number 1, the Bowie State Bulldogs continue just to pound people. I don't think I have any argument number 1, but what about the rest of the poll?
You know, I think at this point in the season, I'm real surprised.
Mike like that.
I don't think you have any arguments.
Real surprised with Tuskegee. One of the hallmarks of Tuskegee is them being able to run the ball. And thus far, they haven't been able to get much going offensively. Another week where they had less than 150 yards of total offense. And honestly, I don't know what happened, but it was 55-0 at halftime. I don't know where the disconnect happened or whatever the case might be, but to see a 61-0 score against a Willie Slater team, that shocked me.
I agree with you. I had to look twice at that.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? And then you had to ask your question, who is Finley?
Exactly.
That was the
when
second
they
one
become a
that-
national power.
I was like, who is this doing this to Tuskegee? And so, Mike, what are your thoughts on the top 10 poll?
Yeah, two things. Albany State, I think they're a little stronger. They're outside your top 5. I seem to think that they will make their way back up into the top 5. They played some tough competition, so the jury's still out. They have they have two wins over Valdosta State and Tuskegee.
That's agreed, but the Tuskegee win is not looking as valuable as it once was.
I know.
And the fact they just lost 2 in a row. So I think your overall synopsis is right.
They lost to West Georgia, and they also lost to North Greenville, who's beaten other teams.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost 2 very tough.
So these are out of conference, and that was
But I'm saying more not who they lost to, but the fact that they lost 2 in a row has dropped them down a little bit.
Right.
So I'm actually agreeing with you
Yeah.
that they can turn it around real quickly as they get back to conference play.
That's what
play to the level that we've seen them play in the early season, and I agree with you.
That's
You'll
what
see
I'm
them
saying,
ascend right back up in the poll.
And you made my point. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was making. They're out
agree
of
with
conference. There were one touchdown loss to North Greenville, who's beaten other teams, and so I would give them a little bit more credit. The other thing is just the SIAC. I don't know how they do their conference standings because if you look at how they have Morehouse first place in the East, There's no way I'd have Morehouse in the first over Albany State.
They have a unique thing, Mike. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't look at that.
Yeah.
At least as of the last 2 years, they actually do the division as the breaking. That's really, if you remember, that's how Kentucky State jumped into the SIAC, although they didn't have a overall conference better record than Tuskegee, is actually the fact that they had a better division record than Tuskegee. Now, usually what happens is you go conference record. If you tie, then you look at the division part of it. But I hadn't seen it before we used the division to determine who goes play in the championship game and obviously who goes in the ranking. So every time I look at the SIAC, I always have to take a double look because I'm like you, Mike. I'm like, what is? Never mind. That's right. I have to.
So I have to calibrate myself to like when you're trying to compare it to the CIAA or. So.
Very true there. Any matchups this weekend in the CIAA or SIAC that stands out to you? Obviously, Bowie State, Fayetteville State. Bowie State is on the road.
Yeah.
Does that matter?
Fort Valley with the overtime victory over Benedict. That was huge.
That was a good game.
Remember the name Slade Jarman. Used to be quarterback in Mississippi Valley. Now he's quarterback in Fort Valley. The Jaguars get to see him this weekend.
And you called this very early that this is a game the Jaguars need to be careful with. And this is actually a game that I'm calling upset. I know Carlos is going to probably blow up the phone, but I'm calling upset on. And this is the reason why in a lot of ways. I think that they're going to be emotionally spent. You get a lot of bad chatter this week. So instead of focusing on what they need to do, I think they're going to be focusing on that. You still have a young team in a lot of ways in the key positions, running back, wide receiver, a couple places there. Obviously, you got the trigger man at the quarterback position. There's only so much you can do, and you're still having some trouble on that line. Yeah. So that really concerns me against a Fort Valley team that's going to go in there, and they want to make this statement. So it'll be interesting in terms of what's going on in terms of that matchup. So the fact that you brought that up, that's a key one to watch out. Any other SIAC, CIAA matchups you say keep your eyes on?
No, I think Lincoln's going to bounce back from that 70-point victory against Winston-Salem State, though. And of course, I say that begrudgingly. so I'm still kind of on last week with that loss. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. Not much there. What about Tuskegee Lane? Did they get right playing Lane? Any
they probably get right playing
Lane. They right the wrong.
I mean, but something to keep an eye out for is just what they can do on offense. I'm just not used to seeing Tuskegee with spotty quarterback play and not being able to run the football. And it'll be interesting to see if there's a changing of the guard, if you will, a little bit in the CIAC.
Certainly. Yeah. At Morehouse, Kentucky State. Kentucky State got a big win over Central State last week. Morehouse had a tough loss to Miles. Miles and Albany State, key matchup, as you just talked about. Albany State doing what they're supposed to do. Miles is feeling good about themselves after that victory over Morehouse. So I think those are two games that you want to look at. Kentucky State travels to Atlanta for that particular game, and then you have Albany State traveling to Alabama, Fairfield being a matchup. Yeah. Any thought process on the Miles Albany State matchup before you?
Oh, well, Albany State.
Albany State.
Yeah, keep an eye out for Albany State. It'll be fun to see what Clark can get up and go do against Grambling again. Grambling doesn't have the firepower that they did last year, but they're still a very good football team. But Clark's 3-1.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because thus far, the SWAC has played much better against the Southland Conference in terms of non-conference. Not quite enough to get the victories that you would like. They have one of them, the Grambling that we talked about, Northwestern, but they have 4 other losses in that matchup. But on the other side, they have done what they're supposed to do against the SIAC teams. They beat up on them. Obviously, you have the Pine Bluff win over Morehouse early in the season at home. Now they come back and get that big victory over Jackson State, so they look solid, at least making it maybe challenging in the West Division. Obviously, you have Alcorn beating up on Miles. We talked about what they're doing. Yeah. So you're seeing several of these Division II matchups where the SWAC has done what it's supposed to do against the SIAC outside of the Alabama and Tuskegee game, which looked like a big victory for Tuskegee, but that's not, other than it obviously being a rivalry. Right. But in terms of where those teams could be.
But it makes you do a double take at Alabama State now. I mean, with Tuskegee dropping 2 thus far. So.
Yeah, it is. Boy, you talking about a team that is struggling with the Hornets, and which is what I'm getting to. in terms of those type of matchups. So that's something to keep your eyes on. But I think the SWAC will continue its trend of doing what it's supposed to be over the SIAC. Other than the Southern matchup, I don't think Grambling will have a big deal to do with Clark Atlanta. I think Clark Atlanta keeps it close early, but then I think Grambling just has too much talent and will eventually make too many plays where they pull away with this game. Any thoughts on going into the major division when we look at some matchups, and then we'll get into the poll ranking here? Can Tennessee State bounce back against Eastern Illinois?
Yeah, Big John Merritt Classic. They're playing at home against Eastern Illinois. I look for Tennessee State to come out ahead on that one. Again, they're a football team. They got down against UT Martin and kind of fought their way back a little bit before UT Martin was able to put it away at the end. But still, a lot of firepower in terms of what Tennessee State is able to do. I think they had a key injury in their star defensive end went down in that UT Martin game.
It was
turnovers and mistakes. They
All-American.
Okandika.
Yeah, turnovers and mistakes. They had that against Georgia State. I saw that in this last game. So can they capitalize and eliminate those as well?
Good thought process. Let's jump back into the MEAC and talk a little bit more about those matchups. Bethune-Cookman had that tough loss on the road to Howard. We talked about Howard playing really solid. They're off this weekend. Can't say enough about Newton. Kalen Newton, as he continues to shock the world in a lot of ways, particularly coming in as a freshman.
Yeah.
With the moxie he plays with, it seems like the push that he gives the rest of that Howard team, how they're playing up to this level of what he wants to do is amazing. Any thoughts that you want to share on what he's able to do as a freshman? And I keep wanting to say that it's amazing that you can get that done.
Like the turnaround that Howard is experiencing right now is nothing short of amazing to watch in terms of what Kalen is able to come in and do. And they have a great running game. I think that's the part that's, you overlook a little bit.
We need to give Phil Yaw a lot of credit as he's doing senior, arguably the best back in HBCU. Some will say top type of back at FCS level. Yeah. As well, really talented back, and he certainly is going to make it easier on a quarterback when you can turn around a lot of part of the game and give it out, particularly when he's able to get you some tough first downs where you have the option and the team cannot just key on you, nor can they just force to put in your hand to be in there all the time.
Right.
Great analysis and breaking down how the game opens up in a lot of ways here. Let's go in here. Yeah. Savannah State had
Let me add one thing on Newton. I think the other thing is talk about his leadership. You had a 9-play, 45-yard, 50-yard drive with very little time on the clock. As a freshman, to step in a situation against a tough Bethune-Cookman team,
make plays.
To have that kind of moxie and that kind of poise is really good. And it's a freshman. And we're starting again, I think we talked about in the last show, to see a number of freshmen step up. We had the backup freshman, Chauncey Caldwell, who stepped up. He's the backup to the backup. Yeah. But you seeing freshmen not only in HBCU football, but in other leagues step up and play big. So I think you're seeing kind of a trend a little bit. I don't know if it's enough data points to call it a trend, but getting back to Kalen Newton, kid is showing some really leadership, and I'm sure the scouts kind of took a look at that.
Great point in terms of that, and it brings me back to the overall focus here where we're looking in the MEAC, where you have Savannah State going into Bethune-Cookman. This is the first time that Bethune-Cookman is back at home since they left before the hurricane.
Yeah.
That was over there in that area. So I'm sure they'll be glad to be home. Should have a significant crowd base. But now they're coming home after a tough loss. Did they bounce back against Savannah State? They played FAMU tough at home, losing just 20-14. So we know this is an improving Savannah State. So this is not a game where I believe that you're going to just run through Savannah State. No. But I think Bethune-Cookman gets it done. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I think Savannah State is improving. I'm kind of looking at their statistics and comparing them to 2016. Much better on the offensive side, to be honest. I don't know about the defense, but just total offense per game. I don't know where they're finding it. The combination of the rush, the pass, but I think on the offensive side of the ball, they're definitely scoring some more points, at least compared to 2015 and 2016. I still think Bethune-Cookman is enough at home. There's the emotional factor as well of going back home. I think Bethune-Cookman pulls it out.
Very much so.
Certainly go in and what do you observe from this matchup between Savannah State and Bethune-Cookman?
Well, I tell you what, Florida A&M, they had to hold on for dear life against Savannah State. Savannah State driving at the end, and Florida A&M was able to thwart them at the very end. So Savannah State is not the Savannah State that we know prior to this year. They're a tough football team, but I think you touched on it. Bethune-Cookman coming back home, playing for the first time since the hurricane. I definitely think they'll be up for this one. So no surprises from the Tigers coming to Daytona for this one.
And we touched on this a little bit, but let's go inside the numbers. North Carolina Central, FAMU, really get excited about these Thursday night games now. You have the Rattlers, as you said, got a tough physical victory against Savannah State. Everybody may not respect it at that level, but they certainly got it done. But now they bring in the mighty Eagles of North Carolina Central. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup? What are you looking at? This is a FAMU team. Defensive-wise, I think it's pretty solid. Offensive, they are able to make some moves, not just a lot of plays, but in a lot of ways, this also can, if you're a Texas Southern fan, I think it scares you to see that FAMU is not dominating everybody else, much like they dominated Texas Southern in the opening game. Yeah. And you still see Texas Southern struggling to score on offense to some degree. But what are your thoughts about this matchup? Central going to Tallahassee on Thursday night.
Well, I think tough game, number one. Central going to Tallahassee. Florida A&M, they've looked much better this season. A great win against Texas Southern, good solid win against Savannah State. But that Central defense, when I watched them against South Carolina State, that team speed just jumped out at me. I didn't think they were, as good as last year's Central team, but if they get some things going offensively, they could be just as scary. I think the defense can carry them in quite a few games. The way they fly
wait
around.
To kind of see what the quarterback plays.
Yeah,
the tours and push. This is a great point, Mike. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think North Carolina Central pulls it out. To be honest, if FAMU took FAMU a goal line stance with so many seconds left to pull it out last week. Their offense has been a little flaky. You got a very strong, as Charles alluded to, strong Central defense. I think they have a chance to pull it out. I personally. So, and those are just my thoughts. You also look at the offensive side of the ball, where they are, and I'm looking up statistically where they are. We don't have enough points into the season, but they're starting to jump ahead of the curve from an offensive standpoint and total yardage per game.
Intriguing weekend for the MEAC, where they only have 3 matchups. They happen to all be conference games, which is intriguing, but everybody else is off this week pretty much in the MEAC with 11 schools. That's a little different. So it brings us to probably the big matchup, North Carolina A&T and South Carolina State. Let's go inside the numbers and break this matchup down.
Yes.
This is the sexy matchup in a lot of ways. Can you sell me on a way that South Carolina State can get what many people would see as an upset, Charles?
Sure. They have the defense that I think can force you to turn the ball over. And they're going to have to get some turnovers, I think, against A&T to kind of play with a short field. It's difficult in terms of watching South Carolina State, to see, if they can march up and down the field.
Matriculate down the field.
But if they, create some opportunities for themselves, short field, they have a puncher's chance. But A&T is a monster this season. Lamar Renard, in terms of being one of the premier quarterbacks in all of HBCU football, he cemented himself. He has carried over his play. I think a little thing that's overlooked with him was he was vital in terms of A&T doing as well as they did last year. Of course, we always talked about Tariq Cohen, but the quarterback play at A&T was solid. It was steady, and he's carried that into this season.
Certainly, Mike. Getting to you, same type of question. Put on your car salesman hat and sell me on how South Carolina State can get the upset against North Carolina A&T, or what a lot of people would perceive would be an upset.
Well, even though this, if I'm putting that hat on, this North Carolina A&T didn't look like a juggernaut. I mean, not only do you have Jamar Smith, you have Marquell Cartwright, they're spreading the ball. So you have Elijah Bell, 2 TDs. I mean, they've taken Tariq Cohen and spread him out a little bit.
Great point.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So I think, though, you also have to look at the numbers. South Carolina State is still number 1 in total defense. And if they bring their A game, they should have beaten the Southern. There are a lot of games where they made a lot of mistakes, but they have the defensive personnel. It's just the discipline. If they bring that to the forefront, they can hang with this A&T team. But there has to be no mistakes, less penalties. If you look at their last 2 games, it was greater than 8-9 penalties, 80-90 yards. That hurt them in the crucial points of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. With that, let's jump in before we get into the SWAC matchups and kind of close out the show with some of those components here. I want to get into the Big Ben Award, talk about the Players of the Week. Obviously, the Big Ben Award is scheduled for Wednesday, November 29th. We'll have some of these great HBCU players that have a connection to the state of Texas. Here we're at the Sheraton Suites in the Galleria area. And again, that will be Wednesday, November the 29th. Make sure you continue to watch us if we give you updated information on how you can get your tickets. But Prairie View got it done in a lot of ways. They were very stellar. So some of the Big Ben helmet stickers go to Prairie View A&M running back Stephon McCray. He had a stellar night against Alabama State Hornets in a dominating 34-0 win. He had 9 carries for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. He averaged over 11 yards per carry. His longest run went for 55 yards. Throw in Texas Southern Tigers linebacker Julian Marquintel led the Tigers defense in tackles. He had 10 tackles with the tackle for a loss. Very solid in regard to what he was able to do, even though Texas Southern Tigers kind of took it to the chin in a lot of ways. You also had Jordan Bentley. He held Jordan Bentley of Alabama A&M Bulldogs, very solid running back, to just 57 yards on 16 carries. Obviously, it seemed like the Bulldogs decided to air it out, and they had some bombs that went. Big plays, and really seemed to surprise the Tigers, as many people thought they would try to run the ball, which made a lot of sense until you see what they were able to do in the air. Prairie View A&M Panthers linebacker Anthony Stubbs had another stellar week leading the Panthers in tackles. The Panthers, Stubbs ended the game with 8 tackles and 1 quarterback hit. Stubbs was also able to force a fumble in that matchup. And then you have Prairie View A&M kicker Zach Elder had a good game against the Hornets. He converted on 2 field goals, one for 48 yards and the other for 21 yards. He was also successful on 3 extra points. Boy, to have a kicker to kick your 48-yard field goal,
that's huge.
Must feel pretty good in terms of night. So in terms of the actual honors this week, offensively it goes to Stephon McCray, a running back from Kissimmee, Florida, 1 touchdown, 104 yards. Defense was Anthony Stubbs, the linebacker from Millville, New Jersey, 8 tackles, 1 quarterback hurry. Special team was Zach Elder, the freshman, kicker from San Antonio, Texas, 2 field goals made, including 1 for 48 yards and 3 extra points made. Those will give you the helmet stickers. We're going to get in here and give me your thoughts on the Big Ben. We'll save some of your helmet stickers towards the end as we get going, but let me know your thoughts on the Big Ben.
Well, in terms of players that you mentioned from Prairie View, stellar performance this past weekend for the Panthers. Huge win going on the road to Alabama State. To pitch a shutout, anytime you can do that, that speaks volumes to your defense and to your program. From a national standpoint, my helmet sticker, Big Ben, goes to Amir Hall. 22 of 32, 420 yards.
He took mine.
6 touchdowns. I give you another one. The Lance Turner with Alcorn. Delance, he had 21 carries, 272 yards with the Braves. So huge performances from those 2 guys.
Yeah, I will see your Amir Hall, your Delancey Turner, and I'll give you another one, Solomon Muhammad from Alcorn State, 13 tackles, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. So Amir Hall is my first choice, and Delancey Turner, big weekend, nearly 300 yards.
Yeah, Delance had he balled out. Yeah,
certainly, Coach Haywood.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, Coach? Coach Mike Haywood. Sorry it took a little time to get on there. Sorry to keep you waiting there. Appreciate you calling and getting the show. Obviously, a tough road trip, long trip to Alabama Huntsville in regards to getting you out there. Tell us that what took place in that matchup between the Bulldogs. You talked about how physical they could be. Was that a lot of what took place in that game?
Well, I think it was a pretty good football game, and I compliment Coach Daryl on that little team better. Offensively, we were able to run the football. Our However, in running the football at one point where it was 77 yards carry, ended up with 5.4 yards carry. However, in running the football, we turned it over twice. First series of the game going in, we turned the football over. Second series of the game, we threw an interception for a touchdown. Followed up in the second quarter by another turnover, fumble. And then the fourth fumble came on another interception. So we turned the ball over 4 times. It was really hard to win a football game. Turn it over 4 times.
No question about that. And it really takes the momentum out of the game when you want to take the crowd out of the game when you're on the road, turnover, and the team jumps out on you 23 to nothing at the half. What goes in your mind in trying to make sure your team to make sure they keep pushing and playing forward as they did in the third quarter, putting up 13 points?
Well, you're playing there was an 8 or 9 minute stretch right there that we turned the ball over 4 times and they scored 23 points. We
Gotcha.
capitalized off our mistakes. It is nothing that Alabama A&M has done. We have created we're our own worst enemy. And so we have to go back out here and compete and fight back to get in this game. But the only way we can do it is by having great discipline. Because we showed a lot of discipline in this first half, so we need to show great discipline in the second half, and not turn the ball over and just do your job. Whatever your job is, just do it.
Let's move on to this week's matchup with Alcorn, a Friday night game under the lights at BBVA. I'm going to let Mike jump in and ask the question.
Yeah, Coach. Kind of reflecting on last week, I think Alabama A&M, despite their win, they had 10 penalties for 100 yards and inability to to capitalize on that. You know, going into this week, what things are you going to do different to be able to capitalize off of some of those mistakes by Alcorn?
Mike, I apologize. I can't hear anything in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Hold on, we're going to get him into a different mic.
All right. Can you hear me now, Coach? Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, going back last week when you faced Alabama A&M, despite their win, they had, I believe, team penalties for right at 100 yards. And unfortunately, TSU was unable to capitalize on those and turn some of those penalties into points. What things different are you going to be able to do to capitalize off of those penalties from Alcorn? Because they, despite how well they played, they also had a lot of penalties that could have been yielded lots of points. So how can you prepare your team to kind of capitalize on those opportunities going forward?
Well, first, and I'm not commenting on any other team, but when we talk about penalties, we talk about a lack of discipline. When we're getting a lot of penalties, we talk about a lack of discipline. And so we have to make sure that we don't create penalties. When other teams are creating penalties, we have to make sure that we respond appropriately. If you're in certain areas of the field, you have to be able to take shots. All right? And shots is being able to throw the ball down the field and have big plays. It may be with crossing routes, posting routes, corner routes, different types of routes. You have to be able to take a shot and get a big play when teams are having penalties. Or the other way is by methodically moving the ball down the field. So when you're moving the ball down the field 4 yards at a time, 8 yards at a time, 10 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards, then you have to make sure that you don't make mistakes. And then you capitalize on their mistakes on putting points on the board.
Certainly. Charles has a follow-up question.
Yeah, Coach, obviously Alcorn is a very explosive team. They are averaging 200 yards rushing. My question is, defensively, what is it that you can do to kind of contain Lenore's footman, DeLance Turner, as well as Marquise Wofford?
Well, in the defense meeting, after we met on the staff today and watched them in the practice tape, I met with the defense and watched their practice tape with them. And I give them the offensive blueprint of what hurts certain plays.
Okay.
You have to have 2 to 3 different ways in which you can stop the zone range. All right? You know, sometimes you have to let the quarterback take it, but you have to make sure that you have somebody athletic enough to make the tackle on the quarterback. Sometimes you have to forcibly want the quarterback to take that, want the running back to quarterback to give the ball, the running back to take it. Then you have to make sure that you have the linebacker fit appropriately to make the play, or send the safety down to make the play. So I met with the giving them 2 to 3 different ways in which can help them make sure that we stop this run game, because this is an explosive run game. We were in practice last night, and we're practicing tonight. Last night, we're practicing at 8 o'clock tonight. But we're in practice last night, and we had 5 big runs. So, in watching those plays in practice, and then going in and watching the film,
right.
I talked about this is what hurts this play right here. All right? May it be the zone read, may it be the zone with the kick out by the fullback coming back the other way, I get coming back the other way. This is what hurts this play. And so we're going to go back out to practice again today, and we're going to run the plays again, and we're going to make sure to be able to stop those plays using 3 different ways to stop them. And so it's a work in progress, and we have to make sure that we do a good job of it. But the key part is when the backups go in, they have to make sure that they do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
That is the key part.
Yeah, you're right.
Because the other night, Anthony Johnson was at his grandmother's funeral, and we had 2 big plays off of reverses. Well, Anthony Johnson shows up in the second quarter of the game. They go to reverse again. They can't run reverse anymore. So the backups have to make sure they get in and do their job.
Wow.
And so we have to be accountable and making sure that we do exactly what we're supposed to do, no matter who's in the game. And we're not doing a very good job of that right now.
Yes, Jake Kristoff seemed to went off in the injury. I don't know if you're at liberty to talk about how he's doing or any of that at this time.
Well, Jake had surgery today on his forearm. He broke his forearm, his left forearm.
Wow.
So Jake's going to be out for the remainder of the year. And,
wow.
We're going to apply for it 6 years. So
good.
He's going to be out the rest of the season.
Good. At least he's a tough individual that keeps fighting back. Man, and I hate to hear that happens to him. A quality young man in so many different ways. I'm sure that you would echo that.
Oh, yeah. He's a very young man. I mean, he's had some major injuries since he's been there. So I think they were going to put a plate on it this morning.
Okay.
When he went in the surgery, I met with the doctor yesterday, and it was a clean break. And you see the X-rays.
Okay.
Clean break.
Yeah. Tough break.
Certainly appreciate you sharing that with us, and personally want to have our thoughts and prayers with him as he battles back in regards to what's going on out there. With that you in a lot of ways, you broke down a lot of aspects of the game. Is anything else in regards to where we should be looking when we go into the coach's corner in regards to this game on Friday?
I tell you that transfer kid number 10, he's a special talent. I remember when he played in Memphis. He was a special talent in Memphis, and he's a special talent now at Alcorn, especially running punch back. I mean, running punch and running kickoff. We have to do some special things to make sure that he doesn't break the game wide open, because the guy is dangerous to himself, and he's dangerous to the opponent. And the reason I say that is because the ball's bouncing on the ground, and he can have 4 or 5 players around him. If it takes the right bounce, he's going to pick it up and try to make a play. That's dangerous for him and Alcorn, because he can easily miss Haley, get hit the ball on the ground, and the opponent recovers. But at the same time, I've seen him miss 5 people on a phone booth and take it to a touchdown. He's dangerous. He's dangerous to everybody that's on the field. So I hope he decides to be a little bit dangerous when he comes out in our favor.
Certainly. I like that breakdown. Now, that's sharing some insight on both sides of it. Thank you for your time, Coach Mike Haywood.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
Certainly. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Getting that breakdown there. So as we move into it, break down a little bit. Let's go into this major division, part of the poll, and see what you think and your thoughts on that as we get going. Coach Simmons is on there. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, he's already there.
I apologize. Thank you, Ralph. I missed it. Coach Simmons?
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. I didn't see you blinking on there. Ralph was trying to tell me you was on the line waiting there, so we got you in here. Let's talk about the game in Montgomery, Alabama State. The defense obviously did a lot of great things, particularly shutout. It's my understanding, first shutout at Prairie View 2009. I know a lot of fans excited about that. Last time they had a shutout, they won the championship. No pressure, no pressure.
First one on the road since 08. Yeah.
So give us some thoughts about that matchup.
Well, I thought it was a really, really hard-fought game for our guys, and I thought they did a great job of answering the bell after 2 losses to start the season. And we challenged those guys all week to get back to playing our style of football, which is assignment, sound football, not trying to do too much, not beating ourselves. And I think that's what we ran into the first couple of weeks, and just not really coming out to play from the very beginning, starting slow. So the guys did a great job of starting fast, even amidst the adversities that we faced, delayed flights, lightning delay to start the game. So we had a shorter warm-up period, but again, second play of the game caused a huge turnover. Defense caused a huge turnover. Offense was able to punch it in 3 plays later, and again, it kind of started from there. And again, the guys did a great job all game long of keeping the pressure on Alabama State. Again, our defense played lights out, didn't give up a point, and we did a really good job in all 3 phases. So I'm proud of the effort that the guys gave, proud of the execution. Of course, there's some things we can do better, but again, we're back to hard work this week, and we're trying to get ready to hopefully go 2-0 conference against a tough Jackson State team that's a lot better than the record indicates.
Certainly, all Ben L. Cavil Senior Award Weekly Honors went to running back on the offensive side, Stephon McCray. 1 touchdown, 104 yards. Defense was Anthony Stubbs. 8 tackles, 1 quarterback hurry. And special teams, Zach Elder, freshman kickers. He gets it done. 2 big field goals, including 1 from 48 and 3 extra points. Must be nice to have a kicker that you can sit up there and feel comfortable when you put him out there on a 40-plus yard field goal attempt.
Oh, no question about it. Zach Elder's done a phenomenal job for us since he's been here. Handling our kickoff and field goal duties. And again, knock on wood, he's 5 for 5 on the season and had 3 field goals of 40-plus yards. So again, he's made more 40-yard field goals in 3 games than we made in 2 years prior to. So again, very excited about his potential for us, and he definitely provides us a weapon. So again, he's a great young man, great family, comes from a military background, and again, he's definitely made us a lot better team, because now once we cross the 40-yard line, we feel comfortable that we can line up and kick the ball and have a chance to get points on the board.
Like that, let it rip. Go ahead, Charles.
Coach, you alluded to that Jackson State's 0-4, but you mentioned that they're better than their 0-4 record. But talk about some of the things that you've seen they do well on film.
Well, they're a very big team. You look at their depth chart on the defensive side of the ball. Their defensive linemen, defensive ends are 6'4", 250 plus. Interior guys have 300-pound guys in there. Linebackers are both 235. The nickel Sam 225 at 6'4". One of the safeties is 225. They're a really big team. Then offensively, I think all of the linemen are over 300 pounds. So they're a very big physical football team. They're going to try to establish the run. They've done a better job the last couple of weeks of running the football. So just think they're going to try to establish that. And they're trying to get the quarterback going. So again, running the football takes pressure off the quarterback. So again, I expect them to come in and try to establish the ground game and get him in a rhythm. But they're a dangerous football team because of their size, because of their scheme. They try to keep everything in front. And like Alabama State, they're going to actually execute for 4 quarters. So again, we have to be very, very sharp in our operation of how we go about our business and do little things right to give ourselves the best chance to come out of the game victorious.
Coach, I wish you were in the studio. Man. I can't help
I know,
but
right?
do this. You know Charles Bishop. You know he's a Jackson State alum. He's sitting up here just with a smirk on his face when you talk about what you see at Jackson State. So I don't know what that's about, but I had to at least share that with you. I don't know if he's excited, frustrated. I don't know what's going on there. But it's a distinct look on his face that it took everybody not to laugh. So thank you, Coach, for breaking it down. Let me let Mike get in and ask you a follow-up question.
I'm still on his expression. Coach Simmons, first of all, I think I may have had a problem with my microphone. Can you hear me clearly?
Barely. I can hear you barely.
All right.
Is
this a little better?
Yes, sir. Much better.
All right. So, in looking at last week's game, fairly balanced across the board. If you look at first downs, the rushing attempts, the passing attempts. Everything was very balanced and a very solid game. So going into this week against the solid Jackson State with these 300-pound linemen, what 2 or 3 takeaways or the top things on your list do you want to tweak and improve on the most going from week 4 to go to week 5?
Well, I feel like we could be a lot more efficient throwing the football. Our completion percentage last game, I think LaBelle was 14 to 27, which is barely over 50%. So for us to be at our maximum level, I think we have to get up with the 60% completion. Which that allows us to move the chains a lot better. We're doing a really good job of getting first down, converting third downs with 50% in the game. So we're doing some good things in that area, but I definitely think we need to throw and catch the ball a lot better if we want to get back to the offensive production that we've been accustomed to around here the last 2 years. Up to close to 500 yards and so long. You have to be able to throw the football as well as wanting to have those type of numbers. So that's a point of emphasis for us this week. Again, they're going to load the box against us and try to make us throw the ball. So you have to be efficient throwing and catching. The receivers got to step up. The Bills got to do a better job of being accurate with it and consistent with his feet. And we got to protect. We've given up 10 sacks in 3 games. So we got to we gave up 13 all last year. So we have to do a much better job of protecting the quarterback, and he's got to do a better job of setting his feet and making accurate throws and receivers, making the routine catch so that we can have a more efficient offense.
Certainly, in a lot of ways, I think you took us into the coach's corner, but let's go there anyway and see in particular a couple of more things in terms of what it will take for the Panthers to get a victory this weekend. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you want your team to do this week?
Well, for us, those things rarely change. Offensively, for us, it's establishing the ground game. Again, they're going to lower the box and challenge us to run the football, and we got to answer that challenge. At the end of the day, we still have to get a hat on the hat. The running backs understand that there's going to be a guy that they're going to have to make miss. The quarterback knows if he pulls the ball, there's probably going to be a guy he's going to have to make miss. So we got to do a really good job. They do a ton of moving up front from the defensive line. Every single play, those guys are moving. So they don't come right at you very often. They're a lot of slanting and angling and twisting and things of that nature. So our offensive linemen have to do a really good job of being disciplined with their eyes. But I think it starts with the ground game for us. Defensively, again, it's stopping the run. Again, I think if we can make them one-dimensional, like last week, they're much bigger up front than Alabama State was. So it's going to be a challenge for James Harper, Devon Reed, and Stephen Scott, Malachi Jean, those interior guys, to continue to keep those big offensive linemen off of Anthony Sterling and Jalen Williams. Those guys are really playing good football for us. But I think it's because our defensive line are demanding double teams. And whenever they can do that, it frees those backers up to roam and make plays. So we got to do a good job of stopping the run. And then special teams, again, we have to be consistent. I think we're doing some good things, but we still haven't played a complete game. We made a 40-yard field goal, we lost the punt, but we kicked two kickoffs out of bounds.
Right.
The little things, covering, we gave up another long kick return. I think they got out to about the 45 or 50, or even a plus out of the field. So we got to do a better job of covering kicks, of giving us good kicks to cover, and then continue to be solid on the punt. We punt the ball a lot better. Made a long field goal again. So we've done some good things, but again, just be consistent in the kicking game, stop the run on defense, and be able to establish the run as well as throw and catch and be efficient on offense.
Certainly. With that, Coach, wanted to say thank you. I had the opportunity to travel with the team and get the insight to see what it means to travel with the team and orchestrate what goes on behind the scenes. So I appreciate getting the chance to get an insight on that. I really want to say thank you.
Well, you set me up, man. I'm always casket clean on the plane. You set me up on sweatpants.
I got it. So we did a little pre-game before we moved out there. Plane didn't take off time with us, so Coach dressed down a little bit, got comfortable, and I said, Coach, let's come on and do the show. He never finds a way to tell me no, so I appreciate that, Coach, and he got on this, so I did set him up.
Hey, Coach, I was wondering, how did Dr. Cavil get you like that? I mean, every time I see you, you're always dressed up. When I saw that video,
in the hell.
So we got out the car at the same time. So I had my suit on. I mean, I'm clean. I'm casket clean. I got the suit on. Right until I changed, because we got to sit in the airport for 3 hours. So we're going to do some walkthroughs at the airport just to kill the time. He waited until I changed out my clothes and said, hey, Coach, let's go ahead and knock out this.
Boy, you should have seen that look on your face. All right, that's cold. All right, well, we'll get a chance to see you this weekend. With that, we'll say go Panthers.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. See you this weekend.
Go Panthers.
He made sure he got it. You gonna say go Tigers?
Go Tigers!
You don't do the Asberry, Jackson State Tigers?
Jackson State Tigers.
Quickly, as we start to close, let me get this major division in here. Told you about the Big Ben Award of February, but let's look in the top 10. 2 teams dropping out this week are Southern Jaguars 1-3, South Carolina State Bulldogs 1-2. Very solid teams.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
one win on the season, you tend to drop out. The other teams will find a way to get it done. So number 10, Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions 2-2, 1-0. Get the big win over Jackson State. They jump into the poll. Previously not ranked, first time this year. Number 9, Florida A&M Rattlers 2-2, not ranked. They find a way to get back in the poll and actually move up to number 9. Bringing us to number 8, Prairie View Panthers 1-2, 1-0. Get a big victory, shutout. Previously ranked 10, so they move up 2 spots. We can see if they will continue to find their way back up to the top part of the poll, top 5, where they believe they should be. We'll see. Another team that is solid, Howard Bison 2-2, 1-0. They find a way to stay in the poll. Looks like they're back in the football business. They continue to get it done. And number 6, the Alcorn State Braves 2-2, 1-0 with a big win over Southern, but they remain at number 6. You see some of that continue. The Hampton Pirates 2-2. They remain at number 5 in the poll as they continue to move forward. Dropping 2 spots. See what Mike may think about this. Tennessee State Tigers with their first conference loss. Dropped 2 spots, not very far, but with tough loss. No longer undefeated on the season, so they dropped in the poll. At number 3, North Carolina Central Eagles, 1 first place vote. Big win, Thursday night game over ESPNU. They 2-1, 1-0 in the conference race. Big win over South Carolina State. The Bulldogs that dropped out of the poll. At number 2, Grambling State Tigers, 3-1, 1-0. Didn't share a lot with the Tigers. A lot of people were disappointed with what they did on the offensive side of the ball against Valley, but the defense stood up. A couple of pick sixes, get it done as the defense stood strong. But they do find a way to move up 1 spot in the poll as they get a win. But they lose a couple of first-place votes with the way they played their game.
Yeah.
And they go to number 1, North Carolina A&T, that pulled some first-place votes from Central and from Grambling, as they have 9 first-place votes, 4-0 on the season, 1-0. They get it done in a lot of ways in regards to what's going on there. What are your thoughts on the poll?
Well-deserved. The UAPB down 11 points going in the 4th quarter on the road, and to come back and to send it into overtime with a last-second field goal and to complete the victory in overtime over Jackson State. Macho win to the Golden Lions. Great win for Monty Coleman and his program.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
I think you hit the money on the head with Grambling State. If you look at the game between the lines and the statistics, they didn't play well. I don't know if that's a function of what Grambling's capabilities are or how they did just in this particular game. But I am starting to lean toward, Charles, your concept of saying, hey, is Grambling that team that we thought they are this year? And North Carolina A&T, well-deserved, number 1 in my book. Tennessee State, I'm not too concerned just yet. They could have fallen 1 spot, 2 spots. Let's see how they do against the other competition.
I feel you on that.
So.
Want to bring a student in mind, sports management program, talk about, he's from Bahamas, want to give you a chance to talk about what's going on in the Bahamas as we get HBCU down here before you close and get back and do the other part. So let me know what's going on down there.
Good evening, everybody.
Tell everybody who you are.
My name is Alex Lutal, and I come from the islands of the Bahamas. Right now, we had 2 hurricanes that hit us: Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma, and some of the southern parts of the Bahamas were destroyed and were devastated from the attack. Like, some people had to evacuate the islands, and some people were out of power and some without water. But my island was kind of fine, so I thank God for that. My family were okay, and everybody from that side of the Bahamas go up were doing pretty good. So everybody else was they had a tough time recovering from what they had, because the structures back home, they weren't there was a smaller island, they didn't have that much infrastructure on those islands, so some of them got destroyed.
Certainly. With that, we're working on a travel abroad, travel away partnership, and you're probably first time hearing about it. We talked about it a little bit because everything we'll have to push it back to next year. We're looking at traveling to the Virgin Islands. Also, now we're looking at going to the Bahamas, so I know you'll be proud about those opportunities. So we're pushing forward dynamic program, sport management program, Bachelor of Science in Sport Management, Texas Southern University with 5 concentrations. With that, I want to close up on this part of the show. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the sports professor with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we come to close, we hope you enjoyed our conversation with Prairie View A&M University Coach Willie Simmons, as well as Texas Southern University Coach Mike Haywood. We want to thank you for listening to Dr. Phil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Also want to say thank you bringing in Coach Asberry as well, now coaching back at his high school alma mater. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Khalil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. right here on KSWH TV, 92.9 FM HD2, The Vein. We're pumping your system in the historic KSWH studio in Houston, Texas. As we say about this time right now, we want to say follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil, DrKenyattaCavil. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon.
Course lecture dismissed.
And as they